Welcome to the Marketing Stir podcast by Stirista, probably the most entertaining marketing podcast you're going to put in your ears. I'm Jared Walls, associate producer and Stirista's creative copy manager. The goal of this podcast is to chat with industry leaders to get their take on the current challenges of the market, but also have a little fun along the way. In this episode, Vincent and Ajay chat with Pando, head of international marketing, partner marketing, and localization at Zoom. He discusses what made Zoom stand out among the competition and the importance of helping people have fun even though they're apart. He also tells an amazing story about being a Scoutmaster in San Francisco. Ajay had a good meeting, and Vincent wears ear warmers. Give it a listen.
Ladies and gentlemen, it's another episode of the Marketing Stir. I, of course, am your host, Vincent Petrofessa, the Vice President of B2B Products and Partnerships here at Stirista. What? Well, who is Stirista? You know who we are, but I will tell you again. Stirista, we're an identity marketing company. We have our own business to consumer, business to business data. Customers utilize that data for email marketing purposes, customer acquisition. We also have our own DSP, so we can help with display. We can help with OTT, CTV. I just threw so many acronyms at you, but that's what we do. We can help you. Email me at vincent@stirista.com. That is how confident I am that we can help you. I just gave the world my email address. Another confidence that I have is in my co-host. Ladies and gentlemen, he's my CEO. He is San Antonio's favorite son. Ladies and gentlemen, Ajay Gupta. What's going on, Ajay?
Hey, Vincent. It's been quite the week, but all things considered, pretty good. Seems like I'm in a much warmer place than you are today, so I'm happy.
It is. It is 14 degrees in New York City. When this comes out, hopefully it's going to be a little warmer. I doubt it though, but 14 degrees. But my hair, I didn't put a hat on. My hair stayed nice. I actually put an ear warmer around my head for that reason. Is it vain? Probably. But yeah, I've been okay. I'm in a warm office. This episode is about warmth. I feel really great about this next guest. But how was your week, AJ? Tell me about this week. You seemed like a little, it was a rough one.
We had our board meeting. I wouldn't call it a rough meeting, but
they don't listen to this podcast.
Board meeting nonetheless. Yeah, I guess we can figure it out if they do or not based on.
Based on this, it wasn't. I heard it was a great board meeting. Because we had a great year, and so those meetings tend to go pretty good. But
no, as you know, we've been working on some brand new products, so it's been a lot of presentations, and but I'm pretty excited. If you hadn't caught me on a Friday afternoon, I could shine my excitement through better. So
that's all right. I know me. I'm always like this. This is it's for people to, especially my wife. It's drives her nuts. My kids love it because they love the energy, but my wife and most of my coworkers are like, "All right, I get it. You're happy." I am happy. I am especially happy about this next guest. I can't believe we got him. It is a company that you all, if you didn't know a year ago, you certainly know now, ladies and gentlemen. It took 50 episodes, then he finally agreed to come on. I'm kidding. We reached right out to him, and he was so gracious. I feel like I know this guy for a long time just by talking to him, and we are utilizing the platform that this guy is part of the company of. It's Zoom, right? 2 years ago, Zoom meant something else maybe, right? But now Zoom is part of the vernacular. Ladies and gentlemen, we are so excited to welcome the head of international marketing, partner marketing, and localization. Ladies and gentlemen, Pando. What's going on, Derek?
Not much. Vincent, AJ, thank you for having me. Very excited to be here and be part of this and add some energy to my Friday afternoon. So really, really excited to talk to you guys.
We're so happy to have you, Derek. Thank you so much for doing this, and thank you for Zoom in general, right? I mean, I know you're marketing, and you know, it's like, oh, I created it myself. No, but Zoom has been, it's been so much part of the vernacular. I think, hey, let's have a Zoom call, a Zoom meeting, a Zoom happy hour. Those are my favorites. But Zoom has become like synonymous with, getting people together, getting people meetings, school. We'll talk about all this. There's so much to talk about on this. But Derek, I love your title. It is unlike any title I think I've read aloud. Some titles now I read, it's like chief growth and growth this and demand generation. But I love your title. Tell us about your role within the organization.
Sure. Yeah. And my title might be a little bit of a reflection of the growth of Zoom over the last 4 years that I've been here, because, I came in doing product marketing and then very quickly took over our international marketing and then our partner marketing and now our localization. And so, I mean, I think the short of it is I spend a lot of time working with our different kinds of partners, helping them expand their businesses and working together on joint initiatives, as well as thinking about our marketing outside the US and our key markets and expanding the use of Zoom, and people know Zoom and trust Zoom in non-North American markets.
And Derek, I want to find out how you got into marketing first as one of my questions. But before that, talk to me a little bit about the localization piece.
Yeah. So yeah, localization is, we operate in like 10-ish languages. And so, getting our content translated, having our website, having our materials, having our support documentation in the right languages, and keeping track of that all and keeping it on brand and with the right voice across many different languages and cultures is what my localization team does.
Nice. And marketing, right? Product. How did you get into marketing? We always like to ask that question here on the Marketing Stir, because sometimes it's I studied marketing and here I am, but other times it's like,
No.
I traveled, I climbed Mount Kilimanjaro, and I realized marketing. I don't know.
I probably how I came to it is not quite as interesting as Kilimanjaro, but probably half step from I majored in marketing. I majored in political science, and I did a couple of internships that were kind of in sales, marketing, kind of all around, and marketing it kind of spoke to me a little bit. I mean, I was drawn to it because one, I did sales one summer, like 100%, commission sales job. And I was like, that was really hard. I don't think I'm cut out for this. So that I look more towards marketing. And part of my personality is like, I naturally evangelize the things I like. So I used to work at LinkedIn, and I remember I would tell people, hey, do you have a LinkedIn profile? Let me teach you how to use it. And so when I ended up getting a job for them, I would tell people, they're finally paying me, but I've been working for LinkedIn for like 10 years. Before I actually got the job. So I think it's part of my personality. I really enjoy it. I really like evangelizing products I'm passionate about.
So Derek, Zoom really took off during the pandemic and it became a household name. There's quite a few other conferencing software and apps out there. So what do you think made Zoom really stand out from its competitors?
Yeah, it's interesting. When I first found out about Zoom, a friend of mine, he's a well-known VC in Silicon Valley, he said, hey, Derek, check out Zoom. And I'm like, video conferencing, like that's boring. There's 1,000 products. Like, why would I join a video conferencing company? But when I, did my research on Zoom and started looking at the market overall, I realized a couple things. Like, one, yes, there was a lot of different products, but none of them were like beloved. None of them were like people really loved using them. They were passionate about it. They created these, customer evangelists. But then as I dug into Zoom, I realized Zoom had that. And I thought, here's a company, they're growing like crazy in a massive market that has 1,000 different competitors. They must be doing something different. And I think you can boil it down to, it's easier to use, it's reliable. And Zoom increased the amount of innovation in a space that had started to feel a little stagnant. There wasn't a lot happening, whereas Zoom launched the virtual backgrounds and showing 49 people at a time. So I think that combined with us being at the right place at the right time with the right product is caused kind of our explosion under COVID and the pandemic.
And what about the marketing side in the growth? What have you guys done that's been different from competitors there?
Yeah, I think we've had a couple advantages. I mean, when you have a product that people naturally already love and is viral in nature, like Zoom is, right? You don't Zoom by yourself. You're going to Zoom with other people. Right. You can fuel the fire so much more easily, And when you think of like before COVID, because it was such a crowded market, we were doing a lot of very traditional out-of-home advertising, buses, airport billboards, like unit radio ads. That's kind of strange for a tech company. But when you look at it, we could do that because one, our product was super viral, so we got a lot of bang for our buck. But two, we also had a very strong freemium model, so that if my mom passed by a Zoom billboard at the airport, maybe she's not our typical like IT decision maker that we're targeting, but she can sign up and use it and get value out of it and tell her her friends about it. And I think that helped us be in the right position to grow with a strong product and the virality of it. And then of course, when that all intersected at the pandemic, this is what happened.
And Derek, it almost seemed like, like you said there, that type of marketing, but you were initially a traditional B2B offering, right? Where meetings, but it's taken on a life of its own. There's regular consumers utilizing Zoom now to keep in touch with a family member, to host a birthday party, a holiday. How did you have to pivot there marketing wise?
Well, I think the first thing we had to pivot to was we had to educate, tens of millions of people about how to use Zoom, right? Like, so when the pandemic hit and everything was just insane for us, we actually turned off most of our marketing channels in a traditional sense. And what we did is we switched a lot of those people into creating how-to videos. Like I had our events marketing lead in the height of the kind of the frenzy around the pandemic and our usage. She was making how-to videos like 5 a day and getting people to do them in other languages, because all of a sudden we needed to make sure people knew how to use our product and knew how to use it safely. And because a lot of times before, it was people had IT departments and they were used to this kind of software, and they knew how to set it up and they knew how to use it appropriately. But when the consumer use case just exploded, we really had to like stop everything and focus on that.
Well, not only that, but I think Zoom, did you ever think that you would get into the child education business? Because I know you were probably in the online space as far as continuing education and at the college level, but did you think that you would be so synonymous with helping education?
No, no. Well, especially on the K through 12. Now, we've been very popular the last few years in higher education. Some of the world's most well-recognized and largest universities had been using us prior to COVID. A lot of times it was for hybrid class environments, virtual office hours. Sometimes it was pure 100% virtual classes. So universities were actually relatively well prepared to switch all virtual. I talked to the dean of the business school where I went to grad school, and she was like, yeah, it actually worked out pretty easy. Now, K through 12, bless the hearts of every K through 12 teacher that has had to go virtual overnight. And that is absolutely a part of our business that, we had dabbled in a little bit, and, there were use cases, but if you look just generally at the country, it was not common at all for any K through 12 school to be virtual, and so I think the familiarity in higher education also drove a lot of the adoption in K through 12 as schools have had to adapt.
And then in terms of kind of your own role in international marketing, what's the strategy there? Do you have folks on the ground in different countries, or is it being handled centrally from the US?
Yeah, so initially, it was just I was kind of the first guy, and what we would do is I would help extend programs more globally and start to work on more kind of regional level initiatives. But even before the pandemic, we started the process of we needed marketers in the ground with that deep expertise, and so field marketing sits under me, and that's kind of traditionally like a B2B software company. You'll see where that's kind of the first man or woman on the ground, and they're really kind of attending the local events, working with the local sales team, and so that's where we usually start in a market we're in. And then we also, as we've grown, we've started to add more, like what would be an HQ-based resource in the region for speed and local adaptation and local knowledge. So yeah, definitely growing our teams a lot internationally and being kind of more as tailored and as localized as we can. And
are there specific countries or regions that you're focusing on?
Yes. Yeah, I mean, we have kind of our top regions. Like a lot of U.S. companies, when we first started going internationally, we focused on other large English-speaking markets like the UK and Australia. I think there's kind of a group of countries where large GDPs, highly skilled workforce, have big needs for technology, and that's where we started. But then also we looked at where our organic growth was, right? Like where were we see, because of the way our product is structured, we could look and see, okay, like what's our growth rate in a place like Vietnam, and make business decisions based off of where we're seeing people wanting to use our products.
Derek, are you, is a silly question, but are you still marketing? Do you have to market, right? There's certain companies, like, everyone has to market, right? But there's certain companies out there where, you think they don't have to market. It's like, why is Coca-Cola marketing? Why is Apple marketing? Right?
Right.
But Zoom, are you still, tell me about some of your marketing
Sure.
initiatives. Is it still a lot of the B2B stuff? Have you
Yeah.
shifted focus now even to marketing business to consumer as well? What has that been looking like? What are some of the channels you use? Given this is the marketing stir, people love the nitty gritty.
Okay, sure. Yeah. So working at a company that's going through what we experienced is basically like working at a new company every 2 months, right? Like we can't have a quarter go by where we're not changing, adjusting, tweaking our strategy. And yes, at the height of the pandemic, we were not thinking, gosh, we hope people know who Zoom is. It was just taking a life of its own, and any money we put behind it was not going to grow as fast as it was just going organically, right? But what has shifted when you go through this as a brand is people now know us for something, and we have to reevaluate, is that what we want to be known for, right? And I think for us, some people know us for something very specific, but we feel like we have more to offer, right? So like, let's say, hey, I use Zoom to do happy hour with my friends. That's great. But we also want you to know that we have Zoom Phone, which is a cloud-based phone product. So you can combine, phones with everyone working from home along with your video meetings. And then when you go back to the office, we want you to know that, like Vincent, where you're sitting in your office, you can turn that into a video-enabled, what's called a Zoom room, right? And so that's where our shifts have happened across many different channels, whether that be out of home or digital or messaging, is making sure that people know what we want to be known for and know what else we have to offer, so that, people aren't just like, oh, they're just for that one thing. We want them to know who we really are and where we're going.
What you're saying there, you're right, because Zoom, I think of Zoom for a variety of different reasons, right? I think of Zoom business meetings, right? That makes sense. I also think of you happy hours, which is amazing, because I didn't really do that with my friends prior. I did happy hours with a few of them, but not that many at once. But I also think about the conferences, those features, our summit, we used some amazing features using Zoom, where you could break people off into different rooms.
Yep.
And then I want to get into how I feel like I know you guys, because I see your CEO all over the place first. But talk to me about, what were some new features that you had to create this last year? Are backgrounds new? Is grid view new? Talk to me about it.
No, I think one of the consumer use cases created a lot of new interest in adding filters. Like, we saw this demand for sort of like consumer level filters, so that when you have a happy hour, you can say, hey, let's have it be French themed, French themed happy hour, or whatever it may be. So that was some things that we launched to adapt to the consumer use case, because, and even some people questioned us, like, why are you doing this? And we're like, this is what people need, like they need to laugh, they need to have fun together. And we've been working on the business stuff for a long time. So we're going to, have some fun filters. The other thing that kind of came to mind is we actually ended up launching a whole new product called On Zoom. And basically this is designed for people that are having events, like I'm teaching a class, or I'm doing a yoga teacher. And because we've seen, such a shift to virtual events, but then, our people were using Zoom, but then they're saying, Derek, like, I want to be able to do registration. I want to be able to take payment and have a paid class, virtually. And so we spun out a whole new product that's live and is in beta right now called On Zoom to kind of address that. And then I think the last thing that we did, not last thing, but another thing that we did kind of in the thick of it was we changed how our security features were accessed, because all of a sudden everyone needed to have that front and center and just drop dead simple, because not everyone had an IT department to say, this is how you set it up. And so when you host a meeting, you now have a little shield at the bottom that lets you put a waiting room, kick people out of meetings, limit who shares their screen, a lot of security features that were already there, but we had to make them even easier for consumers to use them.
Yeah, mute somebody if they, all right, they're saying, talking, we do that sometimes in our meetings. Yep.
Yeah, the mute all button is very popular with K through 12 teachers. Just boom.
Love it.
Yeah, my son was in virtual school for maybe 3 months last year. Luckily, he's back to regular school now, but I felt pretty bad for the teacher. He's in 2nd grade, and it was, I don't know how they do it.
Yes. I mean, they're the real, I think, heroes and innovators of the pandemic. And, my mom's a teacher, and she retired like 2 years ago. And knowing how challenging that would have been for her, in seeing, my son was in preschool, in a virtual preschool for a little bit, it definitely takes a lot of work. So tip our hat to all the teachers out there that may be listening or have loved ones who are teachers.
Yeah, absolutely. And then Derek, has there been kind of, once you guys really started taking off during the pandemic, did you have to hire a lot of people? Were there suddenly a number of hires being made?
Yeah, absolutely. We, we even before the pandemic, we kind of prided ourselves as like a nimble company. And it was clear that what was happening was going to accelerate our business years into the future. And so, like, I don't know if there's a team at Zoom that did not start immediately hiring like crazy. My team has grown a whole lot as we are, entering new markets, having, different kinds of opportunities and challenges. And, we're fortunate in that way, and that, we're one of the companies that was able to kind of grow and hire. And it's actually being able to offer some people jobs that had been unemployed during the pandemic has been such like a bright spot for me personally, as like a manager and like as a leader. So, we're grateful for that. We're still hiring. Check out our career page. Lots of work to be done at Zoom. Yeah.
What's been a personal highlight for you during your time at Zoom?
Oh, I don't. Yeah, that's a tough one. I've had some really high highs. I think when SNL did all of SNL on Zoom, I don't know. I think as a marketer, it's like, that's your dream, and they didn't ask us, they just did it. And I just sat back and like watched the skits and just, I didn't even know how to feel, man. It was like work Christmas morning. It was incredible. Those were, and Hamilton cast did something, and like, there were so many of those moments that kept us going and kept us motivated as things got difficult. But yeah, the SNL one does stick out in my mind. Yeah.
Yeah, that is cool. You forget about that. That's like the closest thing to like getting a parody of yourself, right? I hear people say that, where they're like, how do you feel that so-and-so made fun of you or is doing you as a character? That would be like the ultimate. Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, well, we did watch it a little like what are they going to say?
What are they going to say about you? It's going out to all these people.
But we're pretty roll with it kind of company. So even the little jabs, we all had a good laugh, and we can roll. So
yeah. Well, that's what I wanted to talk about. I touched upon earlier. It's like, I feel like I know your CEO because I see him all over the news. Tell me about him. I like the mission statement. I love that there's a lot of nonprofit work you guys are doing. Talk to me about that.
Yeah, Eric, our CEO, he was one of the reasons I was drawn to Zoom in the first place. When I did my research on Zoom 4 years ago, I was like, okay, he is the opposite of a Silicon Valley bro. He was later in his career when he decided to create Zoom, family man, Chinese immigrant to the US, really kind of like the bootstrap, pull yourself up and make live the American dream. But also he's extremely customer obsessed, and he's humble. Like I always make a joke that like, you can't get out of an elevator before Eric, because he'll just like, no, go ahead, go ahead. And I really appreciate that about him, especially in his position where, very successful and has built such an incredible company. He has, in my opinion, when I see to him, he hasn't lost sight of that.
Yeah, no, you could tell. Yeah, you see him on just different news programs, and you're like, okay, it's happening. This is happening to good people, and you see a lot of. We've had so many people on the on the podcast, excuse me, where during the pandemic, you had people whose businesses didn't do well. You had others that have gone through this change, and they're almost, in some ways, they're like embarrassed to say it, right? AJ, on the podcast, you're like, oh, it's, I was like, well, why? Because you're solving a solution. There's one company where you could drop off they'll come and they'll take your dry cleaning and they'll make it easier for you. Or they'll take your laundry and they'll deliver it back. Or there's other companies like that, but Zoom is one of them where it solved the problem. It solved the solution, and the first thing I think of Zoom is what they did in the education space is making it available there. It's so great. I love hearing that. But what do you think really, when it comes down to it, what are you guys most proud of? You said a shining moment, but where you're like, oh, it was great to see, you said this SNL, but was it education? Was it, what was it, someone in the medical field that you saw?
A couple of things come to mind. Like, one is education. Early on in the pandemic, we said, okay, we're going to have a program for K through 12 schools to be able to leverage Zoom for free, right? So we launched that. Over 125,000 K through 12 schools are using Zoom for free, right? Wow. So that helped us, feel good. It felt like we were doing our part to, help the schools in this challenging time, right? I think the second thing that I think I'm most proud of, and this isn't me, but I'm just proud of our teams that built this thing to work on such a scale. I mean, to put in perspective, December of last year, or of 2019, the most daily meeting participants we had was 10 million, right? Then by April, so like 4.5 months later, it was 300 million daily meeting participants. So we're talking, in 4 months, we went 30x. And I know there were a lot of people out there thinking, how could they scale? They're going to break. And, by and large, our infrastructure has delivered. And I'm proud that it's delivered when people needed it the most. Like, we went overnight to becoming like, like electricity, right? Your gas, like if that goes out, it has such a massive impact on your life and your quality of life that I'm proud of, our internal teams that manage that, and our product leaders that built it that way, and Eric, who had a vision to build a product that would be able to scale on a dime. And so that's what I think I'm most proud of. One thing that Eric kept saying to us in the height of the pandemic, when things were hard, some people were starting to criticize us or question us, and then also we've been working around the clock, so we were tired. Is he said, hey, when we look back on this, we'll be proud about how we operated. And that's our North Star. That's how we're going to run this business in this unprecedented time. And I think all of us as employees, that's what we cling to, and what kept us going when things were challenging.
Nick, it's interesting now that because of the pandemic, we all get on these video calls, right? Whereas in the past, a lot of times you wouldn't see these clients and you would have a conference call, but no one would even think about the video portion of it. But now it's kind of like, if you're the guy that doesn't have the camera turned on, you're the odd one out. Yeah. So what's kind of your thought as people get back into the office, as things normalize? Do you see people still having their video on because we have gotten so used to it in the last year, or do you think it going back to how things used to be?
Yeah, well, I think you got to go back to, I think I have some hypotheses on what the root cause was, why people didn't turn on their videos. I think one is they had a lot of bad experiences and they didn't trust that it was going to work, it was going to be seamless, and that they would look good. Also, over time, not every computer had a camera built into it, years and years ago, but now, like, just cameras are everywhere. And then the third thing is, I think during the pandemic, people are craving, like they want to see you. They want to have a next level of emotional connection that you get over video that you're just not going to get by being on a call, with 10 people. They want to see you and talk to you and say, oh, like you're looking great, or like, what's, is that your family in the background? And but I think as we go back to the office, there will be a new normal, but it's been very clear to us that the behaviors have changed permanently, right? Whether that be people, there's more people working remotely, and they'll stay. Some people will stay working remotely, and then when you're in the office, because now even if you're in the office, you've got more people working remotely, you're going to need your facilities empowered and ready for that hybrid environment, where it's, hey, let's bring in a couple people that are not at the office virtually. And then also because people, I think as we go back, it's not like there are people in higher risk categories. There's people who like working remotely that have gotten used to it. And so I don't imagine a world where there's one day where the pandemic ends and everyone runs back in. And then two, not everyone's going to want to or need to or want to do that for their business. And so I think that's the world that we envision for the future. It's a hybrid world where go to the office. That's amazing. And if you don't want to, take it from home, or take it during your commute, or connect in all the variety of ways. We just want to give people the choices so that they can do it whatever works best for them.
And Derek, what's kind of a marketing pet peeve of yours? We always like to ask this question.
Okay, I've got a couple of these.
How much time do you have? Right?
Yeah, I
think Derek was waiting for this one.
I love it. It was his favorite question.
This is good. One of my pet peeves for marketing is rebrands, just generally, right? I think people rebrand their companies to solve a problem that their brand will never solve, and I think it can be exciting and it can be sexy, and you can make it look really slick, but sometimes I see these companies rebrand at times where I'm like, that is not your biggest challenge, So I'd say that's probably my number one overall marketing pet peeve.
Derek, should we ask you to name names here?
No, I won't. I won't name names, but yeah, I mean, I've been at companies where they do a major rebrand, and it takes a massive amount of it's kind of like, yeah, you got to change, everything in the website and the email headers and every image on, everywhere. And I think there's a time and place for it, but it's not as often as it happens, in my opinion.
Let's stay on the pet peeve thing for a second, Derek. We like to get to the nitty gritty of the pet peeves thing, but especially LinkedIn, right? You had mentioned you had worked at LinkedIn, but we asked this of all of our guests because of your title, right? Because of the company you're at, you probably get so many unsolicited LinkedIn messages. Mm-hmm. What is a message that you just hate, you never respond to? And on the flip side of that, what's a message that Derek says, okay, I will get back to you. Let's connect.
Yeah, I think there's, for me, it's all about relevance. And I taught this. I have a course that I did on social selling, on teaching salespeople how to use LinkedIn. And that's what I focused on, relevance. I think one of my pet peeves is when people take like the tiniest baby step towards relevance as possible, and they send you an invite that's like, hey, Derek, you're also in the technology industry. We should connect. And it's like, yeah, like, I'm not a doctor. That's great. Like, that, like, I'm not a lawyer. That's great, but it's not relevant yet, like, keep going, like, make it more. But the kind that I do respond, I'm a sucker for students. If students reach out to me and it's personalized and they say,
same,
I'm studying this, like, I want to learn, like, can you give me advice? Like, I love to make time for students. But at the end of the day, I think it just comes down to relevance. Like, if you create something that is super thoughtful and tailored and clear you've done your homework, and it hits something that I'm interested in or could be interested in, or you piqued my interest, then I respond, but that would be my advice for people out there in that situation.
Yeah, no, I like that. It's like, hey, do you also like sunsets? Do you also
Yeah.
like, are you, hey, I too have brown hair. Let's connect. It's like,
Yeah.
what? Really?
Yeah.
This is LinkedIn. What are you talking about? That's funny. I like that. Derek, you mentioned some features, right? Now
Yeah.
we're into 2021. What are some of the new things you touched upon? A few as far as being able to gated charging, making turning it into a business, which is great. What are some other features that you're excited about that you could reveal to marketing and sales folks alike who are listening to this podcast?
Yeah, I think one thing that we recently announced, which is really awesome, is it's called high fidelity audio. And basically situations like podcast or music classes or virtual choirs, there was kind of overnight a demand for, hey, we need audio that is optimized for clarity and depth and recording. And so we made that change to kind of help people expand into all those other use cases that, yeah, like you were not giving piano lessons before over Zoom, or there's probably some teacher out there that was, but it wasn't common. So that's one thing that I'm pretty excited about.
That's awesome. Is that a feature that's available currently?
Yeah.
Do we have it on this Zoom that we're doing, or no? We need it. You
I'd
hear
have to
that?
look.
You hear
I'd
that,
have to look.
producers? We know a guy over there.
I'd have to. It is available now. I'd have to look to see or how you set up this meeting if that's what it is. But you sound great, Vincent and AJ. So maybe we are. Maybe sing a little bit and we can tell you.
It's great audio as is, but if we want better, why not? So yes, that's good to know.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Ajay.
So, coming back to the marketing side of things, what are some of the tools that you guys use internally or that you like to use for marketing?
Yeah, I think we run a pretty traditional kind of B2B marketing stack, right? So from our CRM to marketing automation to different digital platforms that help us get in front of the audiences that we want to. I think as we've expanded, that's evolved, and we have a real focus on trying to get as targeted and as relevant as possible. When early on in your business, like you can, send an email across 20 different countries and it's the same email and maybe you just translate it. Whereas now we want to adapt it for that region and have content that's relevant and the people in there look like they're from that region. And so that's been an evolution that has definitely influenced like our tech stack, like getting into, a translation management system that allows us to, be consistent across all of our different languages was, something that we've invested in. So yeah, those are a couple of things that come to mind.
Gotcha. Are there kind of specific marketing channels that you guys like to use, especially when it comes to acquiring new customers?
Yeah, I mean, because we're a B2B2C business, we're lucky in that we have a lot of the way that we acquire new customers comes back to the virality and people being exposed and starting to use Zoom and thinking for free for our free product, and then getting to the stage where they're ready to go to a pro license or get a license for their business. Like when I worked at LinkedIn, we had kind of a similar experience where you have your free LinkedIn profile, but LinkedIn has such a variety of different products that are built on top of it for recruiters, for salespeople, for marketers. And so when you have a business model, the last two companies I've worked at have had that business model, and it's really, I think it can be a massive advantage because you can be very data driven and you can see, okay, when we see these behaviors, we know that we have a higher likelihood. So this is what they need, or this is when we should reach out. And when you already have them in a product, you can reach out to them over email. You can reach out to them in product messaging or notification or prompts, or upgrade indicators, or you create some sort of paywall and hit it. So I think for businesses that are able to create some sort of free experience that creates people getting exposed to the product, but also gives you opportunities to be relevant to them as a marketer, is like as a marketer's dream. And I've really enjoyed working for companies like that.
Derek, did you guys do your own Zoom happy hours? Like, do you recommend any cool games that like people or customers have gotten back to you and said, "Hey, we do this"? I'll tell you what I did first.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
one of
Let's
my
hear it.
friends, we did a Zoom happy hour, and he turned it into a Jeopardy game where we did kind of
Yeah.
Jeopardy over it, where we had like different categories, and one of the categories to make fun of me was like Vin sucks, and all these like categories about me, where name one of Vin's jokes, and it was just fun. And that's one that we did together. But tell me more about some of the stories that you've heard from people.
Yeah. Yeah. I think one of the most fun ones I've experienced was there's this chocolate company in San Francisco. They do virtual chocolate tasting. So they mail you a little package. You sign up for it, and there's a cost to it, of course. But they mail everyone that's participating a little package with different chocolates. You get on a Zoom call. You have a chocolate sommelier or connoisseur or whatever, whatever they're called, and they say, hey, this bar is from Colombia, and it's got nodes of peach, and here's how they made it, and I thought that was really awesome. And also, I have a huge sweet tooth, so that one really spoke to me. I just got an invite for with some friends for a post Valentine's Day newlywed game over Zoom.
Oh, nice.
So this is actually one of the things I've just loved about being at Zoom at this time is like we just get we're not the ones we're not the ones saying, hey, chocolate people, like you should think about doing this. People have just been innovative, and they've looked at their businesses and looked at what's in front of them, and we're fortunate that Zoom has been part of that story, and that we've been easy enough to use that people will launch into these new businesses and ways of doing things, and so we've just been so impressed by the innovation on the chocolate tasting and the Jeopardy nights, and I've had people had mentalists join, and comedians and singers. Like it's all sorts of stuff. It's awesome.
Yeah, we've done myself. I've done some stand-up comedy shows. I also was hired to build a gingerbread house with another comedian and just make fun of it. I don't know.
Nice.
And we had our first summit that we did, as I mentioned before. AJ and the marketing team came up with this idea to do a summit a client summit where normally we wouldn't always do that in the past, to get all these clients together. And we brought in guests. Some of them were podcast guests, and hint, we'd love to maybe have you at one of them in the future, Derek. But we've had some of our podcast guests from CMO of Regal Cinemas and CMO of Pearl Vision, two different businesses affected in different ways, right? But
Yeah.
Zoom made that possible, and it was so.
Actually, our coolest guest was Mick Foley. So I don't know.
Yeah,
if you
Mick
watch
Foley. Remember
professional
Mankind,
wrestling,
the wrestler?
Mankind. So
I'm not a big
kind of had the mask
yet.
over his face.
Okay.
He we got him to Zoom bomb our show.
Yeah.
Oh, nice. That's awesome. That's awesome.
Yeah. So I wanted to stay kind of on the the personal side. We talked a lot about that. Let's go into the personal side of this. We have a crack research team here, Derek. So tell me about your Boy Scoutmaster days, and what that was like, and what is some of that great knowledge you can impart on us and our viewers from that.
Sure. Yeah. So I grew up doing scouting too. I grew up in Texas, and I'm an Eagle Scout. So I went the distance, man. I was all in, and I had a really good experience, and that kind of helped fuel like knowledge for the outdoors. And so when I moved to San Francisco, part of the church I attended had there was a Boy Scout troop that was affiliated, that they asked, and I was single at the time. They asked that I, be an assistant Scoutmaster. So I got to do that, and, take a bunch of young kids from San Francisco, camping, and teach them. But I think a couple skills that have really stuck with me, I think some of the basic first aid skills. And actually, when I lived in San Francisco, I stepped off a Muni, and I saw a girl get hit by a car. And so I ran over there, and it was crazy. The first thing that they teach you is like, don't move someone who's just been, hit. Then I remember that from Boy Scouts, and it was funny because the first thing, the lady that hit the girl pops out of her car and starts trying to drag her off the street. And I'm like, and I basically stopped her, and I was like, leave her, like call, we're calling 911, we're checking on her, but like, don't touch her. So that's a Boy Scout skill. And I've got a few other stories like that where, some knots came in handy to tie for a piñata,
the old square knot, right? I remember the square knot. I was a Boy Scout for like a few days. I was like, outdoors, I'm not that cracked. I'm not an outdoorsy kind of guy, as AJ will probably tell you, but I love the rituals and everything that you guys learn and what it stands for, especially the Eagle Scout.
Yeah. And then now I kind of take those skills and I take my kids camping. So I've got 3 kids, 5, 3, and 8 months. So Vincent and I are kind of in a little bit of the same stage of life. I also got up early this morning. But I think one thing, if I have a tip for parents in camping, it would be you do a dry run in the backyard before you do the real deal. Because the way it works in my house is I tell the kids, like, you don't get to go camping till you can sleep the whole night by yourself in a tent. So we literally did, like with my 3-year-old last year, we literally did a dry run in our backyard, and then we went camping several times over the summer, and it was a ton of fun.
That's awesome. I knew you loved camping. I know we were going to exchange, we were going to barter some of our services, maybe some stand-up comedy tips for which you love, and you already attempted.
I do.
And the camping, because I know, I have a 9-month-old now, so we're in the same boat, and a 3-year-old. So he's going to start asking about camping. I don't know where I could test it out in a backyard here in New York City. That could be dangerous. He's like, see, that guy's camping, Dad. I'm like, oh no, he's not camping, son. But that's
longer story. Yeah.
A whole other story for another day. But Derek, and what about for fun with the kids? That keeps a lot of your time. Some shows you're watching, movies, books. What can you share with the audience there on the personal side?
Well, so my wife and I, we have this incredible talent, and that talent is that we will take something from pop culture and ignore it for 2 to 3 years. then we will be all in, and we'll just be like, have you guys seen Hamilton? Like, it's incredible, so we in the pandemic, we got into Stranger Things, again, late to the party, and we're almost done with Schitt's Creek. So
amazing.
Clearly we are late bloomers on the pop culture front.
Yeah. Well, that's what 3 kids will do to you. That's
fair.
what it comes down to. Yeah. AJ's just getting into some of those.
I actually just finished Schitt's Creek myself a couple of weeks ago. So
nice.
Schitt's Creek. Yeah. I just finished Cobra Kai the other day because all my friends were like, oh my God. Oh, I'm like, man, I was like, I got to get off this thread because you're going to ruin it for me. And that's another one too. If you grew up around that time.
Yeah.
Cobra Kai is fantastic. And it's there's so many great ones out there, but that's the same thing. I haven't even seen Stranger Things yet because there's so much great content out there. You almost feel like you have to jump on it until people will ruin it for you. But that's what you have. 3 kids. I have 2. AJ has 2. That's what happens. Yeah. Kids. Sure. Amazing. Anyway, Derek, this has been so awesome. We're already at the end of it. We could talk for hours. We appreciate you sharing your story with us. We appreciate Zoom. Keep up the great work. It's like I said, part of the vernacular. Sometimes if people aren't even using Zoom, they say Zoom. I'm like, no, go out and get actual Zoom. That's what you need to do. Derek, we appreciate your time. This has been awesome. Ladies and gentlemen, that is Derek Pando, the head of international marketing, partner marketing, and localization. I am Vincent Petrofessa. That is Ajay Gupta. This is another episode of the Marketing Stir. Thank you so much for listening. We appreciate you. Have a great day.
Thanks for listening to the Marketing Stir podcast by Stirista. Please like, rate, and subscribe. If you're interested in being a guest on the podcast, email us at themarketingstir@stirista.com. And thanks for listening.